we're not always in charge, you know? We think
Yeah.
we're
Well, and that's going to lead into my first question, which is we learned that very well with COVID.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh, yes.
So where are you located?
I'm in a suburb. Well, it's not really a suburb, it's its own town, Waukesha, Wisconsin, which is west of Milwaukee, only
Okay.
by 12 miles, but we are a distinct city just west of Milwaukee.
Okay. Yeah. No, I've heard of it, and I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. So I've
Got
spent a
it.
I've spent a little time up that way, but I remember one time years ago somebody brought me back a jar of pickles from Wisconsin, and I had
Okay.
no idea that Wisconsin had a thing for pickles.
Oh, yes. Well, we have a thing for German heritage.
Okay.
So we have Usinger sausage. We have, the cheese making industry here and the dairy industry. And so we are in the beer industry,
Yeah.
almost, I would say about 25% to maybe 30% of the population homebrews. And we've homebrewed for over 30 years. My husband, who's a retired electrical engineer, is now a volunteer assistant brewmaster at a local brewery because he loves doing it and he doesn't want to be paid. He just wants to go in and orchestrate and build their recipes up. And he wants to learn a bigger system, and it's upgraded our home system. And we've brewed for both two of our three daughters' weddings. One isn't married yet, but we'll brew for hers when she gets
Yeah.
married. And that's just what you do. That's
Yeah.
just part of the culture.
It's interesting. I've realized something recently. I'm in a little suburb called Lee Summit. There's a lot of breweries. And one of my good friends, he's a journalist, was telling me that a lot of these kids that are going to school for engineering are at a point where they don't want to be in a boring corporate job. So
Right.
they're all coming together because they drank in school, they love to do it, and they got the brains for it. So they're coming up with breweries. And that's
Hmm.
kind of the new thing.
Oh, but for as many breweries that start, one closes.
Yeah, of
So,
course.
it's at a saturation point right now
Yeah.
across the
Yep.
country.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so a lot of these guys are going to the home brewing conventions, and they're putting their expertise on a national level.
Yeah.
And they're trying to make sure that they preserve the art, but the science
Yeah.
of, right.
And it's almost sounds like podcasting. For as popular as it is and as many that come in, there's always probably a couple that go away as well.
Very, very similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so a lot of people jump on the bandwagon, but it's got to be good to be longevity.
It's the beauty of democracy and having collective voices. That's the thing that makes it all rise to the top. So, well,
There you
it's
go.
it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today, and I am looking forward to delving into your life that you've spent in medicine. But before that, we'd kind of touched on it a little bit. 4 years ago, we were wrapping our heads around COVID, how long it was going to take, the effects that it was going to have. How did you survive that time period, and how did it change you?
Well, personally and professionally, I'll answer it personally first. It affected me that I seemed to have basically no impact. And that sounds really weird,
Yeah.
but in Wisconsin, we still could go to the store. We could still go to church. We could still do everything that we wanted to do. So on a personal level, we still met up with our family. The only difference is that we did more virtual visits. So we instituted on a family basis our Thursday night. We initially called it Thursday night cocktail hour. And then that cocktail hour was really our way to get together with our adult kids.
Yeah.
Well, it morphed into a 3 to 4 hour marathon session that we literally all sat in front of our computers for our Zoom meeting, and we all had dinner together. We had a glass of beer together, and we just talked like we were sitting around our kitchen table.
Yeah.
And we grew closer as a family because we were all supporting each other like we normally would as a family. But it was this regular time that we set apart, which was
Yeah.
great. And we've carried that on.
Yeah.
We continue doing it even now.
Excellent.
professionally speaking, I never closed my office, not one day. I kept it a maskless office. People would walk in and they would say, is it okay? Where do I sit? And I said, you can sit anywhere you want. If you want to take that mask off, you're free to take it off. And they'd go, really? They'd rip it off. And no one, no one got COVID from my office. I never closed. I never required a mask, but I had my recommendations of preventive things and supplements that people could take that would both be preventive from getting COVID, at the severity of getting COVID if you got it, and then if you got it, how it would help mitigate your course and you would get out of it faster. So those were the things that in the very beginning, the scientists that were helping us understand what COVID even meant, they laid these out very early in the game, like by April of 2020, and all of a sudden, poof, they were gone. You
Yeah.
couldn't find that information anymore. And I just thought, isn't that interesting? The things that people can do on their own suddenly went by the wayside, and everything was about the vaccine. And I never bought it. I just couldn't allow the fact that there was only a single solution. There's never a single solution to a problem. I'm
Right.
sorry. I've been a doc a long time. You know, we all know, regardless of the field that you're in, with engineering, there's never one way to do things. There's
Yeah.
several ways to do things. You
Yeah.
know, any field, there's several ways to approach a problem. Is there the best way? Perhaps, but there can be many best ways.
Yeah.
So natural doesn't mean bad.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. I totally get it. So let's get to the heart and soul of your life and medicine and what you're doing right now. If I put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day and one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" What's your answer?
I'm a wellness doc, and my job is to take people, educate them, empower them to be their best health they can be. And what that means is, if you walk in as, you know, as a patient or as a third grader and you say, I don't feel good, how can I translate I don't feel good to I feel amazing? And in the adult world, how can I feel 15 to 20 years younger than my stated age? Wow, doc, how did we do this? This is amazing. Can you do this for my husband? Because I'm an OBGYN. Sure, I can. Can you do this for my parents? Sure, I can. Can you do it for my kid? Sure, I can. In other words, this isn't a confined, oh, I can only do this for women aged, you know, 12 to 50. This is for everyone. How can we use what the tools are available to us to help every person go from I don't feel good to I feel amazing?
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think that's the thing about COVID. I remember cutting myself and I had to go get stitches and I went to the ER and there was a real hardcore doctor there that was getting ready to go to Machu Picchu and he was just really energetic and I said, "What's going on? Just tell me what's up." And he said, this whole thing that's happening right now is going to basically affect everybody that's in ill health or that's like infirmed or older and just they just it's going to be kind of flu-like. So I remember realizing, and I've realized this for a long time, that we all can take care of ourselves, and it's an easy decision. I mean, it takes work, but we can totally do it. We can all get to a better place.
Absolutely. And we don't pay attention for various reasons. Maybe we're doing two jobs or three
Yeah,
jobs, or we're overwhelmed with caring for elderly parents, plus our family, plus our job. There can be any myriad of reasons or what we may call excuses, but we don't pay attention to our own preventive health. We take better care of our car because we rely on our car to get us from point A to point B, but we don't give that same grace to our body,
Yeah.
which needs to get us from point A, where we are right now, to however long we need and want to survive and live to.
Yeah.
So preventive maintenance on our own body takes a very back seat to preventive maintenance on things that eventually will wear out and we have to replace, like our cars.
Yeah.
And that's a priority mismatch. It needs
Yeah.
to be paid attention to.
So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
In third grade, well, I'll tell you what my dream was when I was in high school. I actually wanted to be an interpreter for the UN.
Okay.
And when I was writing my speech for graduation, to deliver to my classmates, one of the teachers I never had came and was looking over my shoulder, and I'm going, "Get out of here! You'll hear this at graduation." And he said, "Well, I want to hear what you're going to say to your classmates." And I said, "I'm telling them to follow their dream." And he said, "Well, what is your dream?" And I said, "I want to be an interpreter at the UN." And he laughed. And I said, "You have no right to laugh at my dream." And he said, "Okay, what do you think?" He said, "I'll tell you what I think you're going to be when you grow up." And he said, "You're going to be a doctor." And I thought, oh man, that's a hoot. I mean, we're talking the early 70s, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You went into nursing, you didn't go into being a doctor.
Sure.
So I went home, and I'm the only girl with four brothers, second oldest. And so, you know, I always checked in with my dad, and my dad goes, "So, how was school today?" So Mr. Smith, and that really was his name. Mr. Smith was trying to tell me what I was going to be when I grew up, and I was writing my speech, and he was like looking over my shoulder, and he goes, "Well, what'd you tell him?" So I told him, and he said, "Well, what did he say?" He said, "I'm going to be a doctor." And my dad, I said, "Isn't that a hoot?" And my dad just sat back and folded his arms, and he goes, "And what about that?" And I thought, oh my God, you too? So when I went to college, I thought, okay, I can make languages and science work. Well, you can't, because sciences have all these 4-hour labs, and you
Oh yeah.
can't fit stuff in other than science. So I thought, okay, I'll do science first, get that out of the way, and then I'll do what I really came here to do. Well, I never got back to that language stuff. I just kept going in science because I found out I really liked it.
That isn't that strange though? I mean, it almost seems as though this teacher set you on that path. Because if that didn't happen and you didn't bring it up to your dad, maybe you would have just been like, like some level of
Well,
manifest destiny.
there are pivot points in our life and pivotal people that we don't even, we think we have our heroes and the people that mentored us. But this was somebody I never had as a teacher. And that one comment was so life changing,
Yeah.
to your point. Hmm.
Yeah, that's wild. So let me ask you this. You're obviously highly motivated in your life. Who's been that motivation, that hero for you in your life?
Well, I'm not going to say there is a hero. What I'm going to tell you is that it was a set of disappointing circumstances that kept, I had an expectation, and my expectations were disappointed, not just a little bit, a lot. So I'll give you an example. Um, I got to medical school, and I I was really, really, really sick, like sick. I was going to school, first semester of medical school, fever of 103 and a half, and peritonitis, which means you can't stand up straight, right? It hurts so much you're bent over. But you don't miss class. You keep going to class. This is medical school, It's like the military. You just don't miss.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing the school doctor every day. He's bringing in specialists, and 5 specialists see me and nobody can determine what's going on. Now, in all fairness, it's pre-ultrasound, pre-CT, pre-MRI time. Okay, so all you have is the history and your physical exam and what you can glean from that. So the fifth specialist on the third day says, I'm going to do a pelvic exam, does a pelvic exam on me, and feels a mass on my right lower side. Now, all through these five specialists, I said, couldn't this be appendicitis? Oh, absolutely not. No, no way. This is very atypical and absolutely not. So when this fifth doctor feels a mass and says, this is a cyst on your ovary, I'm going to manually ovulate you. Well, anybody who has appendicitis knows that if you touch the abdomen and let go, that person screams in pain and wants to jump up and hang onto the ceiling for dear life because it hurts that much. So he's mushing on my appendix abscess that he's calling a cyst. And then he finishes and he throws his glove in the garbage and goes, don't you feel better now? And I thought, I couldn't even speak. So that night, because he started the actual rupture of the abscess, I get admitted, I'm going to be operated on, and the chief of gynecology is going to save this poor damsel in distress medical student, right?
Yeah.
So they're wheeling me into the operating room, and my husband is standing right there. And he says, do you have any questions? I said, yes, I do. I may only be a freshman medical student, but why is my diagnosis a twisted ovarian cyst when I have the symptoms of the fever of 103.5 and peritonitis? Honest to God, he takes my hand and he goes, now, dear, that's why I'm the staff and you're the student. I'm helpless. I have absolutely no recourse, right? So I wake up 36 hours later to find out that not only was I right, it was a ruptured appendix, and I wasn't heard, is that they actually had to bring in a surgical team after they realized their mistake. And I died on the table and I had to be brought back.
Wow.
So if I wouldn't have been operated on that night, I would have died in my sleep at home in bed.
That's
Because
wild.
I wasn't being heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I have another instance of I wasn't heard when I became a full-fledged MD, delivered my second daughter amidst a bowel obstruction, which is turned out to be scar tissue left over from that appendix rupture incident. And the surgeon didn't believe me, a colleague, that my pain was real. So after I delivered my daughter, my second daughter, vaginally, I again, 2 days later, developed a fever and was developing peritonitis. So the resident, this is my teaching hospital, the resident the year below me said, can I be in on your surgery? And I said, you have to be, because I don't trust the surgeon.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to tell me what he finds because he doesn't believe I've pain. He's been stalling and stalling and stalling and not believing anything that I say, despite the fact I have an NG tube in to suck up all the fluids out of your stomach because you can't eat or drink anything, and a fever and peritonitis. So they take me to the operating room. My bowel is black when they open me, and that's gangrene. So they touch the bowel and it goes poof, and it disintegrates under the touch of the instrument. It releases all of the infection, and I died for the second time on the table.
Wow.
The surgeon did not come back to see me for 5 days after the surgery.
Wow.
So I have not been heard despite my medical background
Yeah.
and despite the second time being an MD, not being heard by a fellow MD, being dismissed for my symptoms in my own body.
Wow.
That is what has solidified where my position and my passion comes from. Because if I, as an MD, am not being listened to and heard and not being respected for what I know, then what patient has a chance
Yeah.
of?
Absolutely. Did you have any experience with both of the times that you died? Did you have like a light or anything that you
I didn't,
historically?
because I was under anesthesia.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So maybe under hypnosis, something like that would come out.
Yeah.
Um, but it's, to me, the horrifying part of both of those stories is that the physician in charge, what he said is what happened. In other words, I could say I have pain, and he could look at me and go, "No, you don't," because the second surgeon even refused to give me pain medication at one point because he
Wow.
thought I was drug seeking. And I said to the nurse who brought in a sleeping pill for me the night before I spiked my fever, I said, excuse me, a pill? I have an NG tube going down. I'm supposed to have not even sips of water. So how do you expect me to take a pill? And why is he giving me a sleeping pill instead of a shot? And she said, well, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but he wants to see if your pain is real.
That's crazy. I
What?
mean, that just seems like a denigration of the Hippocratic Oath. I mean, it's
Thank you. But it's worse than that. It's dismissing the patient for real symptoms that you can't just put an NG tube down
yeah,
somebody and not have a reason to keep it. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I was getting morphine for pain. You don't just give morphine and then suddenly give a sleeping pill to see what'll happen.
yeah, right.
That's abuse.
Yeah, that's
You know,
crazy.
that's nuts. Yet that happened, and it happened MD to a fellow MD slash patient.
So, so you've clearly learned from bad examples in your life. In your career, what's been one of the best examples as a medical practitioner where you helped somebody that was in a very bad way? What's one of your best success stories?
Oh my gosh, I have so many. Literally, the story I'm going to tell you is going to surprise you, but I I had a patient who, her husband called the office and said, I'm completely stymied. I don't know what to do. Somebody gave me your name. My wife won't speak. She locked herself in a room, and, we're, you know, she won't interact with family. She won't interact with me. She just locked herself up, and I don't know what to do. And I said, well, if you can convince her to get her in the car and bring her here, I said, I will be able to help her.
Yeah.
So he brought her in. And my whole premise is, as an OBGYN, that our body must be hormonally balanced of the four main hormone groups in our body. And so I just knew that this woman who had, children in college and whatever, was at least in her 40s, and she was going through likely horrendous hormone swing with perimenopause. So he brought her in, and all she would do was like grunt and answer with grunting and with motion and almost autistic kind of action.
Yeah.
And I said to her, okay, I told her my theory. I said, I'm going to do some blood work on you. Are you okay with that? And she looked at me because it was the first time somebody asked for her permission. And she just went like, yes, she didn't say it, but she nodded.
Yeah.
So we got her blood drawn, and her hormone imbalance was through the roof. She, as a woman in her early 40s, actually had a testosterone level of 200%. Now, I'm sorry, women are women.
Yeah.
They're not men.
Yeah.
And in a female body, when you take and have so much testosterone, it usually damps the female hormone,
Yeah.
like almost, suppresses it. So you get an even wider gap.
Yeah.
And that was causing her symptoms. It was mimicking almost that autistic, almost psychotic kind of behavior.
Yeah.
So I asked her permission for, could I bring female hormone up and we'll see what happens to the male. Well, over about 8 months, we started that process and we started shortening that gap, little by little. And about 8 months into this, and all she would do was grunt when she would come in. And when the appointment would be done, she would literally push her chair back and almost run to the elevator because she just wanted to get out of the office. And her husband, who dutifully sat there for each of these visits, would fold up his newspaper and kind of nod at me and say, okay, well, we'll see you in 2 weeks. And that was the way that the appointments went. Well, after about 8 months, she always came in first because he parked the car after he dropped her off at the front door. And she walked into the office and she turned to my secretary and she said, good morning. And my secretary almost fell off her chair. And she suddenly went verbal and she suddenly engaged and she suddenly became this person that had been hidden underneath that blanket
Yeah.
of not being able to communicate. And all of it was hormone imbalance.
Wow.
So my wonderment was somebody else getting a hold of her would have called her psychotic
Yeah.
and would have put her in on antipsychotic medications and would have completely missed the boat
Yeah.
and covered up and put her on a wrong path that we may have never gotten her back.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. We've really ran away with this time here. So before we get out of the door here, I want to ask you one question before we get to all of anybody that wants to reach out and learn more about you. Of all of the things that you've done professionally, what are you the proudest of?
Going out on my own, telling my group of other 7 partners that wellness is important. So I quit the group because they said, no, wellness is a bunch of fluff. We don't want it. Wellness means nothing. We want more surgeries. We want more procedures. So I went out on my own and I did the research on my patients to develop the theories of what I do. And I write books about it because my patients allowed and consented to let me take their research numbers of following them for 20 years and compiling and putting together the graphs that tell women where they should be. So I have an adolescent book because everyone knows an adolescent can be hormonally imbalanced.
Yeah.
I have the perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause book because that gets forced upon women, menopause. But we get told misinformation about what that hormone loss means to our body and our health. And really what putting hormone back in, hormone is our lifeblood, just like testosterone is a guy's lifeblood. And taking it away is Mother Nature's way of saying, wow, in the past, we didn't live that long. Menopause has only been around since 1912
Yeah.
when we put a name to it because we didn't make it past 48 and a half years old.
Yeah.
Menopause didn't exist.
Yeah.
So now that it exists because of wonders of modern medicine, we now, as women, deal as long without hormone, which was our lifeblood, as we did with hormone.
Yeah.
So why is hormone suddenly so good for us when we're going through our childbearing years? We hit menopause and it's suddenly bad for us.
Yeah.
That doesn't even compute.
Yeah.
So it's empowering and educating women to know your body. And there's a chapter at the end of each book, how to talk to your doctor, how to ask for the labs you need.
Yeah.
There is a men's book coming because there's also a men's graph of age appropriate testosterone levels. Not just are you in reference range, are you age appropriate?
Yeah. Yeah. So if anybody wants to get the books, they want to reach out to you, learn more about you, any of the good business, where do they go?
My website is usually the best place to go, which is the whole HTTPS Dr. Victoria J Mondloch, my full name, .com. So DR for doctor, no dots in between. DR Victoria J, my middle initial, Mondloch.com.
Excellent. What a fascinating story. I really appreciate this. This has been so illuminating. Thank you so much. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure. And thank you for allowing me to be a guest on your show.
Absolutely. My pleasure.